How do we know what we know? This is, of course, one of the big philosophical questions, and since I'm with a professional philosopher, I'm kind of nervous to see what's going to happen here. But let me put my head on the chopping block. I mean, traditionally, you can do this either upwards or downwards. You can either start with, well, I know that there's a stage here because I can feel it and see it, and there's a water bottle and a this and a that, and then gradually build up to some sort of a bigger picture, or I can start with ideas in my head about the way the world is, which I then test out and try sort of experiments to see if that does in fact correspond to the reality all around me. And obviously the problem of knowledge, the question of what's known in the trade as epistemology, the theory of knowledge, has gone this way and that down the years. And part of the problem is do I actually know that this is a stage, or am I simply dreaming it, or am I simply part of somebody else's experiment, some mad psychiatrist who is manipulating my brain so that it looks as though there's a stage here, etc., etc. Now, these sorts of questions are common coin in some philosophical circles, at least. And I want to register a gentle protest against some of that and say that we're missing an element here, and it's the element of love, because the danger with talking about knowledge is that it either tries to get to an unattainable objectivity, where I get out of the picture entirely and I'm simply telling you objectively what is out there, which is actually unattainable, or it collapses into subjectivity, to which somebody can say, well, you only think that because it suits your interests, that it may be true for you, but it's not true for anyone else, etc., etc. And I want to say that in many philosophical traditions, and certainly in mine, the notion of love transcends that subject-object divide, because when I genuinely love someone or something, I celebrate what it is or what that person is in themselves, but at the same time, this is not in my own interests, in the sense that if it is, then it isn't love, it's simply manipulation of some sort. And I want to say that actually when you run an epistemology of love, through whether it's scientific knowledge, whether it's artistic knowledge, whether it's theological knowledge, it then sheds light in both directions on the nature of the ideas we have, which then can get tested out in ordinary everyday reality, or on the question of how we know what we know, which is in front of us. So I would want to put love back into the picture, and I observe that in Western culture over the last 200 years, love has been systematically screened out. The old Faust legend had as one of its features that when Faust makes a pact with the devil, the deal is you must not love. You'll get all kinds of other wonderful things, but you must not love. And I think one of the reasons why the Faust legend has been so important in the modern world, from Goethe to Thomas Mann and beyond, is precisely because it reflects something profound about contemporary Western culture. What I mean by love is part of that engagement with other knowers who are also trying to know things at the same time as we are, and who will say, no, you've got that wrong, or you've forgotten that bit of evidence, or whatever. But it's also the kind of generosity of the relationship with the evidence itself, whether it's the observation of planets, letting the planets be what they are, and letting them surprise us, unlike the kinds of astronomers who've got their fixed theories and we're going to make sure the data conform to that. And then, mutatis mutandis, in all sorts of other fields as well, having the generosity of spirit to allow the data to, as I say, to surprise us and perhaps to shock us, but at the same time, not imagining that this is objective in the sense of it's just out there and I'm just a fly on the wall observing it, but recognizing I am in a relationship with this data in some sense or other, and that therefore I have to be self-critical about that, and I have to allow myself to hear the critical voices saying, are you sure you're not just manipulating us? So that's part of what I mean by love in that context. And as I say, I think we have got into a bit of a trap in the Western world. We certainly do in our generation know far more than has been known, and half of it, goodness, is out there in distorted form on Wikipedia. But the question is, what are we going to do with that? For a Christian epistemology, insofar as I would articulate it, I would say I shouldn't be trying to say something which is not my point of view. There is no such thing as a point of view which is nobody's point of view, and we can have different points of view of the same object, and we can talk together about that. And there's a lovely line in an Old English poem about painters in God's new world who will paint the thing as they see it for the God of things as they are. In other words, there's a sort of epistemological humility which says that only God actually sees them as they really are, but God wants us to paint the thing as we see it, to bring our perspective on what we're looking at into the public world, into the public space, and perhaps in the form of beauty, not least. Now, there's a to and fro to be had there, but we may have gone as far as we can get down that